Well, welcome back, everybody, and thanks for staying with us. And I can see everyone visibly relaxing after the tension of the last hour or so. My name's Eve Patton, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm the director of the Trinity Long Room Hub. And it was such a pleasure for the Hub, which is Trinity's Arts Humanities Research Institute, to host Curiouser and Curiouser this evening. In fact, I've already made the decision that we'll just cancel all remaining seminars and lectures for next year and just have quizzes instead. Much more effective for learning outcomes. But my thanks to the wonderful Porrick White and his quiz teams, who were superb, and to the MPhil in Children's Literature students who put in so much work. And I'd also like to thank the Dean of Research Office, because I know that you contributed to this as well. We'll be hearing a bit more about that later on. And also our partners with the International Literature Festival. We're collaborating with the ILF on a number of things this year, and I'm just delighted to be part of that connection, that relationship. So great to have you with us. But we're going to spend the rest of the evening talking a little bit more about the National Children's Book Collection and what it is and how it works and what its impact has been. And before we move on to the main material of that, we've put together a short video to give you a window onto this project and what it is. So a few minutes to enjoy it.
My name is Maya. When researching a project for school, I came across the National Collection of Children's Books websites. Did you know there are 250,000 children's books records in the catalogue? I didn't even know there were that many children's books. I just had to find out more. So today I've come to the old library in Trinity College, where they hold some of those books. The first person I met was Porrick White, one of the lead researchers of NCCB. Porrick, what exactly is the NCCB?
Well, the National Collection of Children's Books was a 2-year project funded by the Irish Research Council, where we looked at children's book collections right across lots of libraries in Dublin.
And how many of your books are in there?
Well, none of my books are in there, but we did put together a book that talks about all the different books in the collections. Well, not all of them, but a lot of them. And some people thought that this book was so good that it won a big international award.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So you didn't build this by yourself?
No, this was a collaboration between myself, so I'm at the School of English in Trinity College, and my colleague Keith O'Sullivan, who's now head of School of English in DCU. And we worked with a whole team of researchers, and we collaborated with lots of different libraries around Dublin, so the National Library of Ireland, Dublin Library and Archive Pearse Street, the Church of Ireland College of Education, the DCU libraries, and the Library of Trinity College as well.
I wanted to learn more, so I went over to the Trinity Long Room Hub to meet some of the researchers who have used the NCCB. You're a partner with NCCB. What does it mean to be a partner?
I think for us, being a partner means that we can both contribute something or give something to a project, and also we learn a lot from it. So this project was a really good example of that for us.
What's the best thing about being a partner?
The best thing about being a partner would be, or one of the best things, would be the connections we make during a project. So one of the people in this project ended up working with us afterwards in the library.
What does NCCB mean to you?
So for us, the NCCB was quite unusual in that it focused very much on the books and collections on their own terms. So usually books are being used to learn about a subject or an event, but here the researchers were really interested in the books and the collections for their own importance. I think it would be great to see the NCCB site and catalogue being kept up so that it doesn't just become one snapshot, but it can become a live thing that people can use to search for children's literature books and collections.
What do you like about it?
What I like about it is that it's very easy to use, and it's very user-friendly. It is easy to search. It's easy to find exactly what you're looking for.
Why should I use it?
Why somebody who isn't a researcher might use it, or a younger person might use it, is just to have a look at what kind of children's books are in the colleges, and therefore you can kind of get an idea for what children's books are considered important.
What is your favorite book in the collection?
What I research, I look at an author named Maria Edgeworth, and There is a gorgeous illustrated book of girl stories in the collection that I like to look at. It's just a beautiful binding and beautiful pictures and a really pretty type. The print is really pretty. Everything about it is pretty.
Why is it important?
I use it to find books that are often quite hard to find anywhere else, and I want to see, where they're located in Dublin, who is reading them in Dublin, and often these copies are quite difficult to locate elsewhere. So it's really important for me to be able to locate them.
What is the future of NCCB?
I'm hopeful that as it develops, more and more information will be able to be fed into the database, so you can provide more descriptions of the actual books that people are looking for, rather than just the location. To be able to provide descriptions of what the text looks like, what kind of book this is.
I've learned a lot more about the NCCB now. It's got me wondering what children would have been reading hundreds of years ago, or even what my grandparents would have read when they were my age. Maybe someday I'll come to Trinity and study English, just like my mum did. I wonder if the NCCB will have over 250,000 books by then. Maybe they'll have millions. Then again, I wonder if the NCCB will still be there. I wonder what I might discover.
That's the wonderfully talented Maya giving you a brief introduction to the NCCB, talking to some of our researchers. And you'll be hearing a little bit more about this project, an award-winning interdisciplinary project that ran between the Church of Ireland College of Education and Trinity College Dublin. And it was led by Pádraig White, who you've seen already this evening, with Keith O'Sullivan, and funded by the Irish Research Council. And it looked at children's book collections across libraries in Dublin, and Pádraig will be telling you a little bit more about how it was put together later on. But one of the things we wanted to think about with this project was the nature of its impact. What has it meant to people, both researchers and to, I suppose, future generations of children like Maya, who you saw? And it's one of the projects that is being used as an example of the very, very strong research that's currently being done in Trinity Arts and Humanities. And it dovetails with something that we're very interested in at the moment, the nature of research impact. And I'm very pleased that we have with us to tell you a bit more about this, our current Dean of Research, Wolfgang Schmidt. I should add that, Wolfgang, you are a chemist, so he may be the only person in the room who can tell us what it was that poisoned the Tin Man when it was painted on him. But before he does that, Wolfgang, if you would like to come up and just tell us a little bit more about the Impact Project and officially launch the Impact case study.
So, thank you very much, Eve. Unfortunately, yes, I'm a chemist, but unfortunately, I don't know what poisoned the Tin Man. First of all, thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you very much for the invitation to launch this event. And first of all, welcome everyone to this event, the launch of the Research Impact case study associated with the establishment of the NCCB project. So I have to say, I really enjoyed the quiz, and it was highly entertaining, so it was great. First of all, I would like to take the opportunity to thank Eve, the Long Room Hub team, particularly Francesca Rafferty for hosting this event, and working with our research impact team, Giovanna Lima, Sarah Bowman, and Bridget Govan. Most importantly, I would like to congratulate Pádraig White, Keith O'Sullivan, the wider team, the research assistants, the postdoctoral researchers, and the collaborating libraries for the great achievements within this project. I obviously also would like to thank the funding agencies, in particular in this case the IRC, the Irish Research Council, for supporting the project. But I also would like to thank the International Literature Festival Dublin for partnering with us for partnering in relation to the quiz event. That's very much appreciated. And obviously, I would like to thank the panel members for attending and for contributing so significantly to this event. And obviously, I want to thank all the guests and in the audience. So thank you very much. The research impact case study, which we are launching here, clearly highlights the great achievements of this NCCB project. And you saw these achievements already in the video. Maya gave a very great explanation of the achievements. Eve indicated already the achievement, and Porek probably will talk a little bit more about the achievements. Just to mention some aspects. Obviously, this project involves 5 libraries, which is remarkable. It establishes a new digital infrastructure, an easy-to-use infrastructure, an open access platform, which is very important to us. And this platform also resonates quite very positively with our younger researchers, with our early career researchers. It provides, as indicated in the video, information on 250,000 children's book, which is remarkable. Children's books that are published in various languages, more than 90 languages, which is remarkable. And it contains a catalog, it contains a database. The database contains, to my knowledge, more than 500 entries nowadays, analysis, and also books from Ireland, about Ireland. And also it contains books that are particularly targeted to girl readers. The platform, which is really important for us, facilitates research. It highlights, it features Irish researchers, but also it allows, more importantly, researchers from outside Trinity College, from outside Ireland, to interact, and engage with the catalogs. So it encourages national and international research. So, and importantly, it encourages international collaboration and national collaboration, which is really important for us. It also is important to note it provides visibility for our own collections here at Trinity College, the Pollard collection, which is great. And one aspect which I would like to also emphasize is that this project, and it was indicated, is an interdisciplinary project involving several partners, also inter-faculty within Trinity. It involves, for instance, also contributions from the School of Computer Science and Statistics. So it's really, really important for us that this project. A key feature, or these key features of this project, resonate with key priorities of my office, the Dean of Research office, and these key features also resonate very much with our vision that is described in the college research excellence strategy and in the college charter that we describe. So my office, we are aiming to create infrastructures in which it becomes easier to conduct research, in which research thrives. And we obviously promote research collaborations within the institution and research collaborations across Ireland and international research collaborations. So these are really important for us. And generally, I would say my office lobbies for a balanced funding landscape across Ireland, across the different faculties, across different subjects. We lobby for a balanced funding landscape in relation to also independent of the career stage of our researchers. And in this context, in this funding context, it is also important that we as researchers, we as college community, are accountable for our research activities to the general society. And it is important that we communicate our impacts to the wider society. So here our research impact team becomes really important. So our research impact team supports our researchers in translating knowledge, research outputs into tangible benefits and articulating the broader impact of our research activities. So this project really showcases both Trinity's expertise in children's literature, but it also shows Trinity's vision in creating digital research infrastructures in the humanities and promoting open access approaches and enabling innovative research, which is important to us. Personally, I have to say I find this project absolutely fascinating because I personally believe that we can learn from this project also in relation to other important future strategic research activities that underpin, for instance, the open scholarship agenda, open research, and open data initiatives, which are currently promoted by the European Commission, by the European Union, and which will be a significant part of our policy and infrastructure development in the years to come here at Trinity College. However, I also feel that this project highlights challenges in relation to long-term sustainability of repositories, online manuscripts, and digital research data. So the long-term sustainability of these resources is very important. This is not restricted just to libraries. It's not restricted to the Faculty of Arts, Humanity, and Social Sciences. It's also applicable to health research and also to the STEM subject. And I know, for instance, our librarian here at Trinity College has very ambitious projects in relation to the sustainability of digital resources, digital data, digital manuscripts, the long-term preservation of this. And my office works closely with the librarian, and we're looking forward to working in these projects, with these projects. So I strongly believe that digital items, repositories, catalogs require a level of investment for safekeeping, for maintenance, and also for content development and technological development. And these aspects are very important to us. We have to think about these aspects. And these aspects might also be one item in our following discussion, in our following question and answer session that we have now, that is chaired by Carmel O'Sullivan and Porrick White. And again, I would like to congratulate Porrick and Keith O'Sullivan and the wider team for the achievement and within this NCCB project. And I thank everybody who contributed to this event, everybody who contributed to the case study, and also to the quiz, to the event today. And I thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Wolfgang. Our thanks to the Dean for setting the impact case study in its broader context. And also I'd like to thank you for the support that your office has given us in letting us host the pilot impact project in the Trinity Long Room Hub under Sarah Bowman, who's with us this evening, Director of Strategic Engagement and Impact, and also the wonderful Dr. Giovanna Lima, whose name you will have heard this evening, but Giovanna is sadly at home having tested positive for COVID, which is a great shame because she put just so much work into this evening's lineup and has just done tremendous work helping us to develop our impact strategies. So we wish her well. And those of you who registered online for the event, if you're interested in looking at the case study and seeing how it works, you should find a link with your online registration. And if you can't find it, get in touch with us and we can send it to you. We're going to now move to the final event of this evening's celebration, which is a conversation about the NCCB project. And I'm really pleased that I'm able to introduce Professor Carmel O'Sullivan, who's going to be part of this conversation. Carmel is a professor in the School of Education. In fact, she's currently, for her sins, head of the School of Education. And I can also say she's a very treasured member of the board of the Trinity Long Room Hub. Carmel is many things, including the convener of the Arts Education Research Group and a member of the Expert Advisory Group for Creative Ireland, Strand 1, which many of you, I think, will be watching with interest. And she's involved in several projects that look at social drama and autism spectrum disorder, at early childhood arts education, and very innovative work readiness program for young adults. And I've seen this in action. It's terrific. Career Leap. And I know, Carmel, it takes up a huge amount of your time and energy. So it's much appreciated that you still have time and energy to come to us in the hub and do events like this. And Carmel is exactly the right person to be in conversation about this project. So she's going to be talking to Porrick White, who you've already seen in action with his other career as quiz host. But in his spare time, Porrick is a much-loved associate professor in the School of English, and he's director of our very rightly celebrated MPhil in Children's Literature programme, a pioneering programme at master's level in the School of English in Trinity. Porrick is co-editor of Children's Literature Collections, Approaches to Research, which was published in 2017 and an award-winning book. And as he will also, I think, talk a little bit about, he was the co-recipient of a major Irish Research Council Government of Ireland award, a research grant, which enabled him to establish the National Collection of Children's Books project. So he's been a real pioneer and a real research leader who I know has inspired many of his colleagues and generations of students. I'm making you sound very elderly, Porrick. Apologies for that. It's just the impact factor. But I'll now ask Porrick and Carmel, would you like to come up and we'll listen to a brief conversation between the two of you.
Thank you very much, Eve, for such a lovely introduction. I think more particularly for Porrick, because I definitely see another future and a career path. Porrick, that was quite incredible. It was really enjoyable. I was sitting beside Wolfgang and our heads were hung in shame. I studied children's literature a little many, many years ago, but oh my gosh, it was such fun as well. But also I think it was the format of it was very accessible. And that's kind of, I think, what this programme is about, that accessibility. But I think, as Eve has pointed out, the challenges and the scale of this, it's quite enormous. It's more than through a nachhuil Maya anseo inocht, because Maya said it quite like just listening to her, she had it summed up in one when she said 250,000 texts. This is a very complex project, and it's not so much complex, on one level. It's multi-layered. So you're interacting there with cross-academic people. You've got Keith O'Sullivan, who's very well known in his field, and it's wonderful to see that collaboration across the libraries, multiple disciplines. Could you just even begin by telling us a sense of the process of what was involved here, how that came about? Because I think it'd be really, really insightful for looking forwards, and I suppose any challenges that you faced.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Carmel, and thanks to Eve and Wolfgang as well. I suppose with this project, we submitted a proposal back in 2013 for a project that was going to look at, I think, 20,000 books, put about 20,000 books in the catalogue, and then write a database that would include 50 to 100. So we met those goals pretty early on and realised that we could do so much more with it. So we ended up with 250,000 books on the catalogue and then about 500 database entries, which was great. But it was because of the team of researchers, Ciara Boylan, Ciara Gallagher and Paolo De Font, that we were working with. And they brought a skill set to it that allowed us to do that and allowed us to surpass those goals. So it was... It was a challenging project because there were so many different stakeholders involved. The National Library of Ireland, St Pat's in Drumcondra, Church of Ireland College of Education, the National Library and Dublin Library and Archive, Pearse Street, and I think I mentioned one of them twice there, and the Trinity Library. So, but the only reason it worked was because we had a good research team, but we also had so much goodwill when it came to our collaborators as well. People who were interested in what we were doing, who were willing to help us along the way and to do this and could see the value in it too. So that was kind of a wonderful part of the project, was that collaboration. And myself and Keith had worked on a couple of things before, but nothing like that. So it was kind of, we didn't know where that was going to go, but it turned out that it was a brilliant partnership, and we've gone on to do lots of other projects together as well. But the National Collection of Children's Books, we tried to set it up as something that had a foundation that would last. We tried to create an infrastructure, as it was said there, or an architecture that could lead to bigger things. So we were only looking at, in many ways, we were only looking at 5 libraries in Dublin. And yet we had the word national connected to the title. But that was deliberate, because it was about saying, well, we only have 350,000, which when you look at it, it immediately goes on salaries, like that's gone. So it is a very small amount, but we wanted to have something that was solid, but something that also had ambition. And we thought that's what we created. So in terms of, I think you mentioned challenges along the way.
There may have been none, but...
No, of course there were challenges. I mean, the greatest challenge for me was kind of drawing upon my trading profit and loss account knowledge from junior cert business studies to try to work through some of the finances. But it was a great experience kind of getting that, you know, and learning how to do that. There were times where, you know, we needed to get things done, and we couldn't necessarily get them done in the way we wanted to get them done. As soon as we created something that was bigger than what we had proposed, we immediately had to make hard decisions about what not to include. And that was a real challenge for us as well. As English literature scholars, our primary focus was on the literature. And, you know, the educational element then was part of it, because Keith was coming from the Church of Ireland College of Education, and they were the 2 core elements. Yeah. And then we were trying to build in Irish language material, and again, that was a real ambition of ours, and we were inviting colleagues to work with us on the infrastructure that we put together and to develop that end. And so that was one of the great things, again, was the collaboration of people who were interested, people who were willing to do Irish language entries. They could see the value of it to their research too, but is by no means comprehensive. But I do hope that there is something solid there that will allow people that we have invited in, or other scholars coming along, to build upon that.
Agus táiste gom go bhfuair sibh an chuid cabhair ó Claire Dunn,
yes, absolutely.
From Moreno Institute of Education for the Irish, which is really wonderful to have that support. What I'm interested in, of course, now you said there was so much left out. Could you tell us a little bit about what might be included in the future, or these decisions that you had to take that we couldn't have that? Or
well, there are a few things about the future. There are different things that we're interested in. There's sort of 3 pillars. One is the academic research. How can we use this for serious academic research? Myself and Keith are working on an article that'll be published later this year about kind of a look at using our knowledge of the NCCB to talk about different spaces, and in physical spaces and digital spaces, and how we can get them to speak to each other rather than them being kind of exclusive of each other, and how they can, in terms of that open access research, we can think about the physical spaces as well as these digital platforms that they've created, that they're not necessarily, it's not about one replacing the other, but it's about them working together to ensure that things are open. So that's kind of the academic research side of it. There's the cultural heritage element. We want to open this up, to make sure that this is something that's accessible to the wider public, that there's knowledge of all these amazing children's books, and especially the material that is connected to Ireland, especially material that's connected to gender, and a lot of these debates that we're having today are found in books that are 400 years old. It's not something new. But then, for me, one of the key things is to bring that to younger readers and younger audiences, which is something that we couldn't do. But if you could have child-friendly entries, for want of a better term, that you could have something where NCCB is used in classrooms right across the country. Like Maya is talking about in the video, or like that question in the quiz about, what county in Ireland has 4 roundabouts named after children's authors. I mean, it's funny, but it's also drawing attention to the fact that children are growing up in these places where these authors are named on roundabouts, but they don't actually know anything about them, let's say. And the NCCB used in classroom settings or whatever could be a way of developing that. So how do you create child-friendly entries on the website? But then, to go much bigger than that, you go, well, how do we then, if that is about opening up the knowledge of what's there for younger audiences or younger readers, how do we get them into the libraries? How can we open up those spaces as well? We live in a city that has very, very little going on for young people, for children in particular, when it comes to culture. It's always much, much farther down the list. You've got the Ark in Temple Bar, which is an amazing cultural centre, and they do huge amounts of work. But the National Library and all the libraries involved in this project, the old library in Trinity, they're sitting on these enormous resources, the potential there to engage with urban planners, to open this up, to make the cities child-friendly, not only Dublin, but everywhere else as well. See, I've kind of lost the run of myself here,
no,
dreaming big. But
I like it, it's good, I love it.
But why not think about those bigger things now? Open access is not simply about creating, we know it's not simply about creating those digital platforms, but there's a wider question of access and children's right to culture. All the UN conventions and reports that come out that say we need to be thinking of children in urban planning. We need to be thinking about them in arts and culture. In Trinity, we're sitting on this, and why are we not doing something about it? We could do something amazing with it. There you go.
I mean, you've opened up a whole host of questions for me. I was hanging on to the one around, I'm very interested in space and the digital divide, because I think our Dean of Research, you just referenced that, and it is that tension between, access to touch. I mean, we're not going to be able to touch some of those older pieces, but actually having the contact with the text, both from a researcher's perspective, but also from a young person's perspective. How, have you got thoughts about how can you make these texts accessible? You talked about roundabouts, if we've got down in County Longford, they need to have these books. Like, how are they going to make them accessible if they're there in the digital repository, but is that a possibility to actually roll this out? That nexus between the physical space. I know there's a library, but even wider than that, to make it truly kind of accessible.
Well, I suppose providing access to the physical library for younger people might be a starting point. In the same way they do it in Princeton University, they have a whole section for children as part of their research library where they can access those older collections. So that's one way, is kind of bringing younger people into the libraries and opening them up. I suppose then there's the other way. I think maybe what you're suggesting is bringing these materials, like touring libraries, to people, to schools or cultural events and so on, and talking about them, or having reading workshops or writing workshops or art workshops that are inspired by some of these books that they never would have come across otherwise.
No, and I think you talked there about the interdisciplinarity of this and kind of working with other groups. Whose voices are missing in this phase, at the moment? Whose voices do you think, or whose expertise is missing, and where would you like to see that grow in the next phase?
Okay, well, certainly for me, the Irish language voice is missing. I mean, Claire did amazing work in coordinating the entries on the database, and we're so glad that it was there. And again, that was part of, creating that foundation. We acknowledged and we knew that, that's not enough, but it was a start. So the Irish language, I think, would be a huge priority for me in terms of the voices, as well as the younger people's voices coming through this too. And then there's so much to develop in terms of education, and because we have all these educational texts that are in there too. So yeah, I could go on. There's so many possibilities with it, but I guess off the top of my head, because I hadn't really thought about that one, would be the children's voices and the Irish language.
Yeah, and I think those are I mean, you referenced there earlier about children's right to culture and all of that. And going along with that is children's right to determination and to decision making. And we have the national framework from 2015 and 2016, that strategy, which is an all-of-government strategy that talks about involving children in decision making, in anything that impacts them, in implementation, in evaluation. And as you were talking, I was getting all excited because Maya is front and centre in my head. She's quite an incredible advocate, really, for their voices. I think at one stage somebody said there about, that perhaps a person who isn't a researcher, implying maybe that a child or a young person may not be, but it is about reframing that kind of understanding of children and young people and their role in that space. I'm very keenly aware about Trinity Access Programme and the amount of children. Somebody in the audience was asking me, I don't know where the lady's gone, do children come in here and do they participate? I mean, this would be just an incredible opportunity to have their voice, seldom, as we often call, seldom heard voices. So that accessibility piece is really key. Yeah. In terms of the accessing materials then, say, to support, you talked about the cultural side, but the educational, would you have ideas or thoughts on what that might look like, what shape, or, just for the future again, how that could develop?
Yeah, well, I suppose, first of all, just in relation, I should have mentioned the Trinity Access Programme as well, and what they do. And they do bring children, they do use the Pollard collection in particular to inspire younger people to create their own texts and then have them displayed in the long room. And that is fantastic. I guess I was kind of multiplying that by about 100, really, and going, imagine all the things that you could do, and turn it into something... something even bigger, but using that, as a jumping off point. I suppose in terms of the educational texts, what we did with NCCB was it was very much looking at how a lot of these textbooks were used over the centuries for very often colonial projects, and so the textbook element, I suppose, for me primarily as an outsider to that. To education is about how the history of those textbooks might inform what we're doing now. One of the books that I wanted to put up on one of the questions I didn't get to ask during the quiz was, an English-Irish spelling book from 1820, which is one of the first ones that we have. And you're like, oh, that's amazing. That they want to educate. In the introduction, it specifically references the peasant Irish so that they can communicate with their landlords, essentially. But just that, the kind of the colonialism that's attached to language is really important. I think that can feed into lots of the debates that we're having at the moment too. But for me, it's about demonstrating that there's a whole history there with that education that might inform education policies of today.
I mean, I was so impressed when I went in. I mean, we've been aware of the work that you've done on the project, but going in again to refresh yourself, to see what is there, what's available, just the depth of kind of insight that's provided. I went right back to the first one that you had in the mid-1650s, and then kind of looked at a few others along the way, and I looked at the functionality around themes and issues and that. It is a phenomenal resource. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Do you feel it offers everything that you wanted it to offer?
No, in a word. Because I didn't mention it actually, one of the greatest challenges that we had midway through the project was that the Church of Ireland is integrated with DCU. So all the call numbers start changing. And so that was a huge challenge. And we had to make a decision then that we stuck with 2014 as the cutoff point, and we had to do that. So all of that material needs to be cleaned up. It needs to be updated. We need to, check and make sure that everything is as it should be within it. But one of the main challenges now, and the Dean referred to this, is to do with sustainability. When Giovanna approached me last year, it was this time last year, to see if they could do this impact study on NCCB, would I talk to them about it? I'll be honest, I was a little bit skeptical about it. But then, as I worked with her on it over the last year, it exposed so many different things in terms of how researchers were using it that I never would have known. I mean, I had the numbers that 73,000 people had used the site, but not what they were using it for. And Giovanna identified that. But what Giovanna also identified was that the platform that we have, the software on it, is completely obsolete, and it's on the brink of collapse. Wow. So the guys, Julius and Derek and Stuart, in computing in TCD, have done an amazing job in actually holding it together for now. But, you know, there are literally weeks left before the whole thing has the potential to disappear unless we do something about it. The only way to do something about it is to get investment and... is to have some sort of investment. I suppose I'm thinking of it in philanthropic terms. It seems the most obvious thing. But we need to think about, when we're creating these open access resources as well, how we sustain them. It's something that the Dean talked about as well. And to think very, very carefully about that. All the work that we've put into this, all the people that are using this, and then all the ideas we have about how we can develop it, and all of that will disappear in the next couple of months unless we get support, essentially, for that.
And what is lost?
That's a bit stark, but being realistic about it, not being crude about it either, but this really does come down to investment financially and resource-wise.
And I think before we get to the sustainability, which is a key point, but I'm thinking back, Maya has really made an impression. What is lost for that generation if this becomes obsolete, and you can't bring it forwards? And NCCB is sitting there somewhere, like, how can you quantify that loss for researchers, for young people?
Well, we've seen that with some brilliant websites that have disappeared, and I think the loss here would be is that it's a huge loss to the cultural heritage that we've drawn out from this project. So before this project began, there was no real sense of what was in these collections. Don't get me wrong, there was research being done, but to actually take that bigger picture of, well, what's going on in DCU and what's going on in Trinity according to the libraries, and Liam mentioned that in the video as well, that it allowed, and in the research impact study, that allowed him as a librarian to see what gems they held within their collection that weren't anywhere else. And I think that's one of the things that we'll lose. We'll be back at square one. We won't have that bigger idea of, well, I know that that's in that. In an ironic way, the only thing that will survive out of it is the book, the edited collection that we did, which brought all of this new research to the fore. We had amazing contributors there who were using the website. They were even using the website when it hadn't yet been finished, but we put it up there so that people could use it as we were still building it. But that will be the thing that's left. And that generation Maya's talking about in the video of what will she discover, she won't be able to get access
and I
to
think
those things.
It's very timely, and like we're in a decade of centenaries, and when you look back, and I did do a search to see what kind of historical kind of key aspects were there that one could dig into from any perspective of research. I typed in autism, I typed in bullying, racism, all sorts of contemporary issues, and it's phenomenal to see that they were referenced going right back, again, for any of our scholars, any of our students, and again, I reference the word scholar being from Maya's age forwards. Yeah. I mean, they're involved in scholarship as relevant as any other form. That is a big loss, It is, But equally, it's an opportunity in terms of this decade of centenaries to push this one forward.
Yeah, and just as you're talking there, I suppose it reminded me, one of the goals we have as well is to do with issues of diversity and inclusion. If you could have your tags based on that as search functions on the platform, you could be bringing people, school children or researchers, directly to texts that engage with those issues, whether it's from a century ago or from today. We have tagged them along gender lines. That was the big one, and Irish lines. But we weren't able to go into to do more than that. But that would definitely be one of the things that we would love to do. But the potential for all of that will be lost, I suppose.
Well, I'm being very optimistic. I think there's no way you truthfully, can or should lose this. I think there has to be support for this. You talked there about, children's right and their entitlement to culture. We talked about their right to decision-making processes as well. There is obviously through the Creative Ireland, the Crinún the Nóg, huge support there. I think it is about engaging people. I'll just come, I'm conscious of time. I'm looking at our time master there because we do, maybe if people have questions, but this sustainability piece is really important around what I suppose the future holds. We talked about the platform, the digital platform, etc. Is there anything else there that you would be saying to us as your colleagues, as your community here? What is it that can come and support and wrap around and get behind this?
I guess there's a few steps to that. There's and this evening is one of those steps, about pointing out how useful it is, whether it's collaborating with the festival and demonstrating how we can use this for public engagement, or whether it's students writing up database entries. And I know Brian's here this evening. He was one of the students that helped us write entries on the database in Irish and English, and kind of demonstrating that we need this as a learning tool for our students right now. We use it on the MPhil programme all the time, but we can't do that right now. We can't add to it right now. But I do think that an event like this is really wonderful, and I'm delighted that we've had the opportunity to do this, and thank you to everybody for the support with that. But I do think that maybe we need to think about who's not in the room and how do we get them in the room. So our research impact is great. But how do we bring the philanthropists or donors, and I'm just being practical, hopefully, rather than being crude about it, but how do you bring these people together who are finding the people who are interested, might be a better way of putting it. How do we find those people that are interested in what we're doing, show them what we're doing, and have a conversation then about what we can do in the future?
It's a lovely way of putting it in a sense, and I think that is the challenge. And I think there's a lot of people here that can contribute and support in that capacity, not least of which are the children. They're family members, and they can really point to the usefulness of this. I'm going to just ask, if that's appropriate, if there's any questions, or do we have time that people might want to just one. If there's a quick question.
Nothing more threatening than that line.
No, Sinead. Well, anyway, look, on my own behalf, from the School of Education's perspective, and also a person working in the arts, this is quite a phenomenal and extraordinary resource. I don't feel we can lose that. I don't think we will lose it, truthfully. And I think it's beholden on all of us to get behind it now and support you. But the final words must be to yourself.
Oh, no, just to thank you, and to thank Eve and the Dean and everybody else who's supported this along the way, and particularly to Giovanna for all the work she's done in creating this impact study over the last year. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Carmel and Porrick. And I know some people will have questions. Please badger Porrick on the way out, because he will be pleased to answer them, but we have run over time. So very briefly, to conclude, what a wonderful evening. For me, there are two key takeaways. One is, isn't it great when we have research like this which just climbs out over the walls of Trinity and speaks to the wider public about all those things that we share and are interested in as human beings. And it's just such a terrific project that Porrick led, and the impact case study, I think, just shows us and illuminates the importance of it. But the second thing, and it's been touched on already by everyone who's spoken, and I'm going to borrow the Dean of Research's word for this, is safekeeping. How can we keep safe not only the treasures that we have in Trinity and the other libraries across Dublin and Ireland, but how can we keep safe the research that we do, the online databases that we produce, all of those digital materials and repositories that we work so hard to create, so that Maya's generation will still have them when they're ready to start their own PhDs in the future. So I suppose for me, that's a very important message that we want to take away from this evening's event. But look, it's been absolutely terrific. Thanks to everybody who's involved, to Porrick and his teams, particularly the MPhil, to Giovanna, who's not with us but contributed so much, to Francesca, who has brilliantly run the event, to Wolfgang, our Dean of Research, thank you so much for being with us this evening, and to Carmel O'Sullivan, who's been such a generous and encouraging interviewer for our closing event. And thank you, all of you, for staying and for joining us this evening. I know you'll have found it great fun and also an interesting occasion. So I look forward to seeing you all again in the very near future. Good night, everyone, and take care of yourselves.